Welcome, everyone. Let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking the strategic complexities of AQA Topic 3.2.2, which is all about supply chain management. Whether you're studying for your exams or teaching this material, this explainer is built to give you the operational theories, the formulas, and the real-world applications you absolutely need to master this topic. So, let's dive in. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with purpose and value, then move to internal versus external production. After that, we'll hit strategic sourcing decisions, modern supply chain standards, and finally, wrap things up with ethics and profit distribution. All right, part one, purpose and value. We're establishing our operational foundations here. So we have to start with the core terminology that underpins literally all operational strategy: logistics. It's formally defined as the management of the flow of goods, services, and information from the absolute point of origin all the way to the final consumer. It covers transportation, warehousing, distribution, the whole shebang. But here's the crucial takeaway. Logistics is not just about loading boxes onto trucks. It's the vital information and service flow connecting that origin to the consumer. Honestly, modern logistics is often said to be 90% data and only 10% physical movement. Because if the data doesn't flow perfectly across the network, well, your physical goods definitely won't either. And when we look at the bigger picture, it becomes super clear that a supply chain isn't just a single step. It's a highly interconnected network. We're talking sourcing raw materials, moving right into manufacturing and production, blending in the transport and logistics, handling all that warehousing and inventory management, right up to that final sale to the customer. Getting this entire chain to run like a well-oiled machine is exactly what gives a business its competitive edge. Moving on to Section 2, internal versus external. We're looking at the strategic trade-offs of production. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. It's a massive strategic trade-off. On one hand, producing internally means a business keeps direct, absolute control over its quality, its processes, and its ethical standards. You literally oversee everything in-house. But on the flip side, outsourcing or buying in means contracting external third-party providers. Why do businesses do this? Usually to drastically cut costs, tap into specialist expertise they just don't have, or to boost overall efficiency. It's the classic business battle, right? Total control versus flexibility and cost reduction. And this strategic choice makes a huge difference in a business's ability to match output to actual demand. You see, businesses have to manage their supply to handle the constant roller coaster of cyclical and seasonal demand. They can tweak inventory, change employment types, like using temporary workers or zero-hours contracts, or they can lean heavily on outsourcing. But if a business drops the ball here and fails to match supply to demand, they are in for some severe operational headaches. They'll either end up with excess inventory that totally drains their working capital, or worse, they'll hit stockouts. And stockouts just drive your disappointed customers straight into the arms of your competitors. Definitely not what you want. All right, Section 3, strategic sourcing decisions. Let's analyze those influences and supply chain disruptions. When you're analyzing how many suppliers to use and who to pick, an examiner is absolutely going to expect you to weigh multiple and honestly sometimes conflicting influences. Think about it. You've got speed of delivery and lead times, which are life or death in fast-moving markets. You've got to scrutinize quality and effective product rates because rework is incredibly expensive. Then there are payment terms and how they hit your cash flow. You also have to assess capacity. Can this supplier actually scale up if your product suddenly goes viral? And of course, today, businesses have to look hard at environmental factors, like a supplier's CO2 emissions, to make sure they're sourcing sustainably. Okay, it's time for some active learning. We need to practice your analytical chains of reasoning, specifically looking at how external shocks hit internal finances. Pause the explainer now and complete task 1. Make sure your chain of reasoning logically connects a major logistics disruption directly to those operating profit margins. Go ahead. Welcome back. Now let's apply this to a real-world scenario using the Sheen case study from the AQA materials. We're comparing two potential suppliers for a new clothing line. Notice how Express, out of China, fits perfectly with a fast fashion model. They've got shorter lead times and much lower emissions at 50,000 kilograms, but they are running at a massive 96% capacity utilization. On the other hand, Reliant in Portugal offers longer payment terms, which is great for cash flow, and they have an incredibly low defective rate of just 1.25%. Plus, they actually have high spare capacity to handle huge orders, even though their emissions are a bit higher. So put your operations manager hat on. You have to weigh these metrics. You're balancing Express's 96% capacity utilization, which leaves almost zero room if demand suddenly spikes, against Ryland's impressive 1.25% defective rate, which is perfect for lean production. Pause the explainer now and complete task 2. Section 4. Modern Supply Chain Standards, Transparency, Accreditations, and Technology. These days, supply chains are absolutely not just hidden back-office functions anymore. A huge part of the modern landscape is supply chain transparency. This is when a business openly shares the details about every single stage of its supply chain. We're talking about where the materials are mined or grown, all the way down to the exact working conditions on the factory floor. It lets stakeholders actually verify that operations are responsible. The big takeaway here, transparency is a direct response to consumer demand for real ethical accountability. The days of hiding behind a murky, complex web of suppliers, yeah, those are pretty much over. And modernizing these operations goes hand in hand with technology and verification. We're seeing supplier third-party accreditations. These are independent certificates guaranteeing standards for quality, safety, and eco-friendliness. On the tech side, AI is stepping up in inventory management to actively predict and optimize stock levels. Automation is completely streamlining warehousing and distribution, which cuts down on human error and labor costs. At the end of the day, all this tech drives much faster response times to cyclical demand. A brilliant example from the specification is Far More Cycles. They invested heavily upfront in a new inventory system to guarantee long-term returns and real operational agility. Section 5. Ethics and Profit Distribution. These are the A-level strategic dilemmas. Let's tackle some of the high-level ethical dilemmas and the sometimes harsh reality of how profit is distributed. For A-level candidates, ethics and operations is a huge deal. Ethical sourcing isn't just a nice PR move anymore. It's mandatory. Businesses have to actively police their supply chains. That means setting up a strict supplier code of conduct. But look, a code is just words on paper without enforcement. That's why rigorous supplier audits are absolutely essential to ensure actual compliance. You have to address fairness, ensure responsible procurement, and absolutely guarantee product safety. If you fail in these areas, you're risking total reputational ruin. Now, how profits are distributed along the chain is fascinating, and it's heavily influenced by scale. Large national chains can achieve massive economies of scale. They have incredible buyer power, essentially dictating terms to their suppliers, and that allows them to maintain much higher operating profit margins. But then you have independent retailers like the cooperative Far More Cycles. They often face brutally squeezed margins, sometimes down to just 2%. Because they lack that massive buyer power, they have to survive on niche expertise, amazing personalized customer service, and super strong ethical values just to hold their ground in the market. All right, here is your final masterclass challenge. Let's pull everything we've talked about into a high-level evaluation. I want you to weigh the long-term brand equity and customer trust that comes from absolute transparency against the immediate financial and market share benefits of lean, ultra-low-cost production. Pause the explainer now and complete task 3. Welcome back. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about this quote directly from the exam board's marking guidance. It says, "It depends on the costs of quality relative to the benefits it generates, and whether the quality of products ends up better than competitors." Ultimately, finding the perfect supply chain strategy is this delicate, constantly shifting balancing act. So the question is, are you prepared to make the tough operational trade-offs necessary to lead in tomorrow's market? Keep that strategic tension in your mind as you study. Thanks for hanging out and working through this masterclass with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.